welcome to the Courageous Self-Care Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care that goes beyond bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. It goes deep into the murky mystery of the unknown world on the inside. And what happens is when we focus on that kind of self-care, it's transformational. It really affects every part of your life in a positive way. And that's why we go into that scary place. Usually we need a guide to do it, and that's why we're here today. I've got a guest with me, Ramona Remesat. Welcome, Ramona.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Ramona.
Well, you know how when you have a very important decision to make, or you're kind of conflicted between a couple of different choices, we typically reach out to mentors and experts and gurus and all kinds of resources on the internet and self-help books, and we spend a lot of money doing that. I actually help women, mostly entrepreneurs, kind of, cut through all of that noise and the subsequent confusion and overwhelm that usually results from that by teaching them how to, access that deeper part of themselves, that inner knowing that they have, so that then you can make those big choices and decisions quite easily, even financial ones, and really find that they can take fearless action in their lives and in their businesses.
Well, that's part of that mysterious interior that you help people access, right?
Absolutely.
That's a big guest to have on the show. Well, you explained that very well. Thank you. And what I love to get our guests to do first off is to share your favorite current self-care practice, because I know they can change as we grow and honor ourselves and where we're at. So what's a self-care practice you have, Ramona, that's a favorite right now?
I connect very deeply with water. I love snorkeling. It's very meditative for me. There aren't really any options to do that in Calgary. So I was so excited when I discovered something called flotation therapy. And some people might not know what this is. Essentially, it's like floating in the Dead Sea. You are in a vesicle, if that's a word, of like 700 pounds of Epsom salt, so you float. And the water is at the exact same temperature as the human body, and you're in the dark. So after you've been laying there for a couple of minutes, you kind of lose the sensation of where the water starts and your body ends. And it's really just you there with your pure consciousness. There is nothing else. And it is so cool because honestly, you can't do anything else in that space, right? You can't get distracted like you could in a meditation and get up and do something else. It's just you, yourself, and that's it. And in that place, you can do some very deep work, or nothing at all, if you choose to do that, right? So for me, because, again, we're in this world of constant noise and distraction. Even when we say we're going to take a me day, and do nothing except for, stuff that's important to us, I find that kind of always goes out the window by about, an hour after my day starts. So for this, where I'm sealed in there for my 60, 90 minutes, whatever it is, that's it, and it really does allow me to just care for me. That's all there is. And it's amazing. And I absolutely love it.
I tried it once, and I have to say that I got water in my ears. So I don't think I put the earplugs in properly, because it was there for a few days after, and then I didn't go back. But when I was in there ignoring the water in my ears, I found the same thing. At first I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. What am I going to do? But yeah, I eventually lost that and settled in, and it's very womb-like, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was the weirdest and coolest sensation I think that I've ever experienced, and after the first minute or so, you almost feel like you're moving, like you're trying to orient yourself, because you have no sense of space or like where you are. Of course, you're not really spinning, right? But you kind of have that sensation. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was just so neat.
Yeah, I remember feeling like I was floating in the cosmos, because you really can't feel your body. You just feel like the other part of you, your soul, I guess, your spirit. And that's what I felt like. So how often do you do that?
Not often enough. Right now, I'd say it's probably quarterly. Yeah. I would love to probably go once a month. It just doesn't always work out that way.
And how did you first learn about it?
I was actually out in Radium Hot Springs and went into town into Invermere, and they had a place there, and it's actually called Do Nothing, Do Nothing Flotation Therapy. And they had a juice bar in the front, so I went in and to grab myself a juice, and I'm like, what's all this? And I got chatting with the owners, and they were explaining it, and I next thing you know, I was signing up for a session, and it kind of just started from that.
Yeah, and now those places are popping up all around. I think a lot of people are really experiencing the benefits of it.
Oh, absolutely. And it started kind of way back in the day, and then kind of lost, kind of people thought it was a little weird. And then it kind of had a resurgence again for sports injuries and people who have, arthritis and things of that nature. So it's kind of coming back into fashion again, if you will.
Yeah. And I remember when I was taking my kinesiology degree, I remember hearing about something like that as sort of mental and psychological training for athletes, but it was called a sensory deprivation chamber.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, because everything is, all of your senses are not needed, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I can identify with it being incredibly peaceful. So thank you for sharing that. No guest has ever said that before. I like that.
Well, unique. Yay.
All right. And so let's move into the second part of this interview. I love to get our guests to share their story of courage. And the reason that we do that is because I feel that courage is an energy that is always there. We can always tap into it, but so many people that I speak with, especially women, say, "Oh, I'm not courageous." And I wholeheartedly disagree. Everyone is courageous. Everyone has stories of courage. But what happens is, I think we compare ourselves to other stories of courage that we've heard, and well, mine is nothing. But to be able to tap into that courageous energy, all it takes is to hear someone else's story, and then we can bring that courage in when we need it. So that's why I get you to share that.
Awesome. Yeah. And mine isn't really one of those big bowl you over ones, but when I do share it, I have had people say to me, yeah, like I see myself in that. So for me, kind of goes back to when I was about 12, and I just suddenly became incredibly drawn to study and learn and read everything I could get my hands on relating to, I guess, what you call new age stuff today. Got into all these phases, and I remember in grade 5 I was so into astrology, I did everybody in my class's astrology chart. And it kind of grew from that, but then you get through and you're ready to move off to university, and like everybody else, I figured I had to get a real job, and I ended up graduating in corporate communications and public relations. And from my very first job right out of school, it was kind of different iterations of Meryl Streep's character in The Devil Wears Prada, if anybody has seen that movie. And I just remember I was so frazzled and just like burnt out. And my husband looked at me one day and he's like, you know what? Maybe this isn't what you were supposed to be doing. And it was the biggest light bulb moment I have ever had in my entire life. You could have knocked me over. And so my out at that time, we were lucky because I was about to have my second child, and we kind of thought, it makes sense for me to stay home with the kids. And I thought everything was going to be, that was it. And what ended up happening, though, was that I was just really having this feeling there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. And I had such guilt and shame, because here I was being able to be home with my kids. I knew so many women would have given anything to be in my shoes. And here's me, miserable and unhappy. It was like, what is my problem? But it really spun me into quite a depression. And I just remember sitting at my kitchen table one day and tears were streaming down my face. And I was kind of having this crisis of like, who am I and what am I here to do? And so not long after that, it seemed every time I looked at the clock, it was like 111 or 1111. And it was kind of freaking me out. I'm like, what is this? And as chance, or not so much chance, as the universe would have it, I was chatting on the phone to my mom one day, who lives all the way in Ontario, and she was telling me, that she was having these weird things where she kept seeing 11s, and she didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know what was happening to her. So what ended up coming from that is, I came to see that it's kind of like a a way for the universe, to get your attention, that has something important to share with you. And it's something that our angels use to connect with us. And so right away, I kind of went back to my preteen self or my younger self, and I studied voraciously everything I could, because I'm like, obviously they have a big message for me. I got to figure out what this is. And I read everything I could about angels, and I studied with Reading Virtue, and I became a certified angel therapy practitioner. And I thought, you know what? I think this is it. This is the path. But again, then all of a sudden, all this stuff came up, right? It was like, oh my God, I can't do this. What are people going to think of me? Like, if I put myself out there and come out of the spiritual closet, what's that going to look like? And I'm, in my 40s, starting a business. I don't know anything about business. So all these fears just came coming to the surface. And, it was like this inner turmoil. And one day I just kind of had this voice in my ear that said, what scares you more? And it was like, oh. And I'm like, okay, let's look at it from that perspective. So here I am on the one hand, where I can wake up day after day after day feeling unfulfilled, lost, disconnected from my purpose, or I can take that leap. I'm smart. I don't know everything, but I can learn things. I can do it step by step. I don't have to have all the answers today, right? And when I put it into that perspective, it was kind of like a no-brainer, right? Like, so there you go. Of course, I was still, hesitating, and my husband had great perspective on this. He was like, if people really don't want to be your friend because of all of this, then were they really your friend in the first place? I was like, yeah, you know what? Good point. Of course, once I shared everything, everybody's like, so, that's like who you are. And I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? Right? It's that fear. You make it into this thing that you think it's going to be, and when you finally take that move and you get to the other side of that fear, it's not anything at all what you had made up in your head, right? And we spend so much time in that space. It's like there's hours, days, I'm never getting back again, So yeah, for me, but it was that question, or that way to put it into perspective of what scares you more. And I still use that to this day, when I'm making a big choice or decision, and of course using the inner guidance, but it's like, yeah, well, what is it that, this or this, what's the option there?
Mm-hmm. What a powerful question. I have a bunch of questions, but let's start with that. So I love that question, and it speaks to something I heard a speaker describe once as not our comfort zone, but our familiarity zone.
Right.
And because our familiarity zone is often very uncomfortable, like you mentioned, feeling unfulfilled, not living the way that you want, feeling shame and guilt for not being happy in what seems like from the outside the perfect life.
Right.
But going into that unfamiliar takes incredible courage. And that question that you heard and then subsequently asked yourself is a powerful bridge between those two places.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So courage, if you are new to the show, I often explain the difference between courage and bravery. Bravery is when there's an absence of fear. So if someone's brave about something, it seems to someone else that they are courageous, but on the inside, they actually don't have fear. So they're just being brave. Whereas courage is having a fear about something, and then there's some sort of value on the other side. And that value draws us through the fear, and we're able to come out on the other side. So what would you say that value on the other side was for you, Ramona?
Totally feeling like that deepest connection to who I am at the core of me, that deep soul level. Like, it's like I could see it, I have to be her, but how do I get over there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was like I was almost kind of like, inauthentic in all of the other sort of things that I was trying, thinking, that's what would bring fulfillment and all of that. But no, like I said, and I was getting such clear signs right from the first day. Every job, like I said, it was like I wanted to turn around and go, there's got to be a camera on me because this cannot be happening. Yeah.
I love how you talked about doing everyone's astrology chart in, what grade were you in?
Grade 5.
In grade 5. That's amazing. So I'm just curious about that experience. What did you learn about people doing that?
Yeah, it was kind of an insight. And I do, I think that there was a lot to it, that it wasn't just some mumbo jumbo. You do kind of see key traits in people. You know, you don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, right? But, you know, they read it and they go, oh yeah, you know, that's, you know, seems pretty accurate, right? So it's kind of neat to see that. And yeah, it's funny because now my daughter, who's 17, is going through this big astrology phase right now. So
What a surprise. I love that. And I love that you had that indication as a child. And that happens so often, I think, when we really identify with something and then move away from it because we think this is what I should be doing. And it feels like, for me at least, feels like a homecoming to admit that, oh, I actually knew what I was doing when I was a kid.
well, and I always say, you know, we are so tuned in as kids. What happens is as we grow up, we hear things and we believe things and we kind of turn that switch off. And, you know, even as a toddler, if you're in a hurry and you have your kid by the hand and you're trying to get into a building and they're stopping dead in their tracks and they don't want to go in there no matter what. And you're like, stop being so silly. And you're like, come on, you know? And so growing up, this child hears, you know, stop being so silly over and over. So as we grow up, we kind of learn, oh, those feelings, those tinglings, those nudges, those, you know, gut feel, all of that. Like, obviously I must not be able to trust that because mom's saying it's silly, right? And it's heartbreaking because imagine if you had really honed that, you know, especially as a young adult when you're making really big choices, you know, jobs and what to study at school and partners and all of those, you know, big things, right? You wouldn't have to get into the angst of it all. You'd be so tapped in that it would just be like, no problem. You know, I
Yeah,
know
just like
directions.
how kids are crazy flexible and
Yeah.
then don't stretch for a good 20 years and then lose it. And if you want to get flexible again, you need to work at it. Whereas if it just happened the whole time, there
Yeah.
would be so much less struggle.
Absolutely. And then I wouldn't have had that angst either. I would have known what I was following from, you know, going to school. I wouldn't have studied that other stuff, right? And it
Hmm.
happens so frequently. Like, how many women do I meet in their 40s who wake up one day and they're like, I hate my life. And how did I
Mm.
get here? Because everybody said, oh, you should, you know, you're good in math, you should be an accountant, or you're good with this, you should be a nurse, or whatever. You know, we
Yeah,
get pushed into these things, but it's not alignment, again, with who we are at our deepest soul level. If we could figure that out earlier, boy, would the world be a lot easier to navigate, right?
absolutely. Well, I think we're heading in that direction. Like this
Yeah,
seems to be so much more commonly accepted than when you were 12.
right, right. Yeah.
Now, what do all the ones mean?
Really, it is kind of like a tap on the shoulder. So it is like, hey, you know, we are trying to communicate with you. There's, you know, kind of like that awakening where people are starting down a spiritual path. For people who are kind of already on that path, we can see the ones and 11s again. And that is a reminder to be, mind your mind,
Mm.
because we are powerful manifestors and we always want to be focused on the things we want, not on the things we don't want.
Mm.
Sometimes you'll see that as a reminder, like, okay, what have you been, you know, dwelling on? Are you staying in that positive headspace? Sometimes we stray from that path, right? So it's kind of like that course correction. I always say angels are like our spiritual sheep herding dogs. They know when we're going off the path, and then they kind of nip at our heels, and that's where we feel those intuitive nudges sometimes, where we know we're off track and we have to kind of course correct ourselves.
Mm. That is very useful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So I want to know, like, when you decided to leave your job and move into this new phase, what were some of the thoughts that you were having that were like the old thoughts that wanted to hold you back, and how did you overcome those and choose new thoughts?
You know, it almost wasn't even a conflict. It was kind of like once I decided, like that, like I said, that fear kind of thing, and I said, what scares me more? It was just full throttle from then on in. It was because I knew there was no way, no how I was going back to the old. So that was like not even on the plate. It wasn't an option. It was almost like it has to be this or nothing, you know?
Mm.
So in that case, I just started. And, you know, so after I finished my angel therapy practitioner certification, I kind of reached out to a couple friends and started doing some readings. And, you know, they told people, and then they told people. It was very organic. Like, I wasn't advertising. I didn't have a business card. It was nothing like that. And these people started coming, right? So I was like, oh, oh, okay, universe, I see where this is going, right? So it just felt so right, and it felt like I had such that, like I felt connected. So really, there wasn't any real fears. I mean, that kind of came later as I really started to move it into a business. And then, you know, me going, okay, so now what do I do? Because I don't really know the world of online marketing and all of these kinds of things. But again, it was like, well, I can get help for those things. You know, I can get a coach, or I can find somebody who's done it before and work with them and kind of help me through that. So, so I didn't feel at any point I was kind of like, good luck on your own. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you got a lot of signs. Do you have a particular instance that comes to mind where it was just such a clear sign that you were on the right path?
I tend to get my information through feelings and things that I hear. So again, I'm a feel person. I have made major decisions in my life all on the feel. Like I've moved across Canada 3 times. I bought vacation property like while I was on a weekend getaway. I'm like, I did not come here intending to buy vacation property, you know, like, and we built this house that we're in now, our dream home 5 years ago, again, based on feel. So it's for that, it's that when I feel that, I just know. You know, it's that knowingness that I have, and then I'll get subsequent other things, you know, that kind of give me the little nod. Like I'll see the number sequences on the clock or on license plates, or I'll be walking along and all of a sudden there's a white feather on the ground, and you know, there's nothing to make feathers, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know, right? So it's these little acknowledgments and things, but for me, it tends to be just that sense of that deepest feeling, and it's different for everybody. You know, people say, well, listen to your gut. But not everybody gets guidance from their gut. And that's the tricky part about this whole inner guidance thing, because for me, when I was learning it too, I thought I was the one person who didn't get it, because I would ask for people, you know, well, how's it showing up for you? And they'd explain it. And I'm like, I'm not getting that. Why isn't it working for me? And it wasn't until I figured it out how it was unique for me that everything started to make sense.
Well, kind of like astrology, right? There's so many different ways that we show up, even though we all kind of look the same kind of concept, but there's so many variations. And so it's valuable to know that there are a variety of different ways that our intuition and our angels and our spirits are going to connect with us.
Totally.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I thought that I was not psychic. That's the only word I knew. I didn't know about intuition. And my granny had talked about hearing a little voice, and I'm like, I hear nothing, so I must not have that gift.
And you know, we all have the ability to get guidance in multiple ways, but I always say we kind of have like one that's like it's like a 4-cylinder car, you know, one cylinder and the engine fires first.
Yes.
And that's what we have, but that doesn't mean we can't get stuff the other ways, because we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a feeling person too. And once that I learned that that was actually a thing, then it became so clear to me that that's how I was sensing the unseen. And since then, now I do hear a little inner voice, and I do get visions and see things. And my husband also alerted me to the fact that one of the best ways to get guidance is to listen to words that people are saying. Like for you, your husband, he gave you a very clear sign. This isn't the right thing for you.
Honestly, it was almost like I wanted to go like this, because I felt like there was a light bulb there. It was like so tangible. It was like, what?
Yeah. So Ramona, I know you have so many gifts to offer, and if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, which is ramonaremesat.com. And I don't know if you'll put a link, because some people be like, how the heck do you spell that?
I'll put the link in the description.
But also for people, if they're really at a point where they're like, you know what, I think I really am ready to kind of embrace this a little bit more and kind of dust off that part of me that I shut off as a child. I'm also hosting a retreat June 8th to the 10th in beautiful Radium Hot Springs. It's called Connect to the Power Within, which is what it's all about, right? And that's actually the website for that, connecttothepowerwithin.com.
Beautiful. I'll put that in the description as well.
Perfect. And there's 4 spots left.
Okay. Well, super. It's certainly, I know that spending 3 days on yourself is the biggest gift you can give yourself, because after, like, it's almost like a before and after. Before I did this, this is what my life was like. And after, it's so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's important to give yourself that space and time.
Right. All right. So please do go check out Ramona's retreat and her website because it's incredibly valuable to learn how to listen to and trust the information that's coming from the inside of you. Ramona, thank you for being a guest today. It was really delightful chatting with you.
Thanks so much again. I had a ton of fun.
Oh, good. And if you enjoyed the program, please give it a like. You can leave a comment, you can ask questions, share it with your friends, and become a subscriber, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. We would love to add you to our community. Let's see, I'll leave you with this final thought that has been percolating lately. And I talk a lot about how self care is not selfish at all. And then, even the deeper question under there is why do we feel conditioned that wanting to be happy is selfish? That is just, it doesn't even make sense. So, when you are noticing that you have a longing for something greater than where you are, more happiness, more joy, more contentment. Rumi, who's an ancient Sufi philosopher, he said that the answer is in the longing. What you are meant to have in your life is it's an answer that is meant for you. So don't feel selfish about having desires and longing for something that's even better than what you have now. That's a natural human tendency, and honor it instead of chastising yourself for it. That is a very deep form of self-care. Another form of self-care is listening to this and being here. So I honor you for doing that today for yourself. I look forward to connecting with you again next time. And Ramona, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
All right, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.